Well, happy day in Arkansas. Hello again. Today it is 69 degrees on the 3rd of February. Who on earth would have thunk that? Punxsutawney Phil would have. He saw his shadow the other day, which means we're going to get an early spring. And I've actually, look at here, we've even got flowers in our yard. Look at here, on the second, this is incredible. On the 2nd of February, we are getting flowers, or the 3rd of February. 3rd of February, we're getting flowers. These flowers came out a couple days ago, actually. And the grass is beginning to turn green. Look at over there. I can't see in the window too well. Let me see here. Can you see any green grass over there? I think so. Amazing. Oh, makes it great to work out here. So let's do some. I decided to start the day out today, you know, standing up instead of crawling underneath the car. I don't want to go under there for at least another day or two. But we're getting this thing ready to put the gasket on. Now this housing is not that heavy. You know, I can go ahead and lift that baby up with one hand, put it up on top of those springs. It won't be any problem at all. The differential itself now is a little more complicated, a little heavier. So, but you know, what we're going to do is make two surfaces, two machine surfaces. The problem is there's a lot of things like that right there. Let me get down there where you can see it. That's a raise above the surface. I can catch my fingernail on that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the motor tool and knock that down. There's another spot right there. I don't know where they came from, but we've got to get rid of them. When it comes to doing something like this, I mean, look at it this way. You fix your car, you get your engine running good, everything's fine. You went ahead, you put your differential in with your gasket and everything, but you didn't clean the surfaces well enough and they begin to leak on you. I mean, how would you know that unless you crawl under the car? How many times does a guy crawl under his car in a month's time? How about never? Okay, so you're driving down the road and all of a sudden you hear a growling and a snap and a crash and a crunch because the oil all ran out. And you know, you're driving down the road, you don't see the oil, you know, it's just going out the back, dripping out the back, drip, drip, drip. So what I'm going to do is make sure this surface is as clean and rust free as possible. So when I go ahead and put the when I put the gasket on, I'm going to put it on this surface first. And these studs will hold the gasket on. I'm going to go ahead and put that gasket sealer on, put the gasket all the way around, make sure it's nice and tight, and then give it a little while, and then tap it down again, and then go ahead and put the differential up on top of it. And the best thing about these studs, it's great, you just get the differential up there, and you can catch them on these studs. The holes in the differential, you can catch them on the studs. Whereas some of the ones I've had, they're just holes, and you have to line up the differential and get the bolt through both of them before you can screw it in. Oh man, I tell you, and if it's a heavy differential, you'll be there for an hour and a half trying to get those holes lined up sometimes, and in the process you mess up the gasket. It's moving around on you, whereas this, easy can do, just slip it right over the studs, put the nuts on, you're done. And you know, the washers. Speaking of nuts and washers, let me show you what we have for this. I went to Summit Racing, the only place I could find these things. Now, you'll remember that I told you needed the 1/16 of an inch thick copper washers to act as seals. You try finding those things in a pack in a kit. Well, the closest we could come was these right here. This is they call it, their third member. It's called third member nuts and washers, set of 10. They're designed for this rear end, and these are aluminum. They're not copper, but they'll still smash down, and they're a little bit thicker than a 1/16 of an inch, but they will smash down and do the job. And these are self-locking nuts. So all those nuts that were originally on there, they're going away. The Dodo Bird, we're going to put these brand new ones in. They're not that expensive. I think they're like $7 or something like that, but it's worth it. I don't want that rear end to be leaking while I'm driving down the road just to save $7. Forget that. Anyway, this will be going on shortly. Alright, back to the old cleaning here. I need to knock off these bumps right here. This one and this one. This is a real catch one here. Catch your finger good. I'm going to go ahead and just use the rotary tool I got here and just kind of knock it down a little. That feels good. Try the other one. And that's how you do it. And be sure to vacuum out anything that may have fallen down in there, especially any metal filings or whatever. You don't want that mixing with the oil and getting into the gears, and it just acts like sandpaper over a period of time. Alright, now we'll go ahead and clean it up, and then we'll get the differential over here on the table, and we'll do the same thing, hopefully, to the mating surface on it. Man, I'm about exhausted just carrying this thing over there. I don't know what this thing weighs, but it's a bunch. Anyway, as you can see, we have a lot to clean off on this area. There's pieces of gasket here and more gasket over here. We're going to make it as clean as we can. However, you know, if we look down here, there's old, hard, crusted up oil stuff laying around down in there. Look at that. Get as much of that as we can out. I don't want to loosen a ton of it. It'll come off by itself anyway. It really won't hurt anything as long as it's just caked oil. But I do want to cover up the gears. When I start hitting it with the wire brush and stuff, I'm going to cover it up like this, you know. We'll just kind of work slowly and carefully around here so we don't wad up the towel and the drill and the wire brush. But, you know, first it's just scraping and cleaning and seeing what we can do before we hit it with the wire brush. Well, the first thing I decided to do is go ahead and take one of these little wire brushes with some turpentine. There's a lot of this down in here near the center edge along, you know, is grease and goo. And sandpaper wasn't doing such a hot job, so because it was just gumming up the sandpaper. So we'll just go ahead and hit this baby with lots of good turpentine and a wire brush and spend some time, and I'll bet she cleans right up. She's already doing a pretty good job. Well, that was a piece of cake. A whole 10 minutes work and I'm done. Okay, now we're good to go. We're ready for the gasket when the time comes. Let's flip this baby around and find out what size nut is holding that yoke on that pinion shaft. Well, there's the size on the 1966, 1 1/16. You know, I got to tell you, it has been so much fun. It's so nice to be out here working in beautiful weather. It's fabulous. It's 70 degrees today. It got up to 69 or 70. I haven't been in the house, so I really don't know. But tomorrow's supposed to be the same way, 70 degrees. And old Gary up there in Indiana, old Rebel 9668, he commented in the last video, he's really been enjoying the weather. And I understand exactly what he's talking about. Oh, it's so nice. I feel sorry for you folks up north going through all those blizzards and ice cold crap and everything. Poor old Brendan up there in Michigan. I'll tell you what, you guys are tougher than I am. I could never live in that kind of stuff. I lived in it as a kid, and I said, that's it. I'm out of there. You know, tough guys up there. Us wimps, we all came down south. Well, of course, I don't have a 1 1/16 inch socket, but I did prepare. I'll have to go downtown tomorrow, pick one up at Harbor Freight. But I do have. I prepared. I went. You know, I bought a 1/2 inch impact wrench. I got that at Walmart here the other day. They had a really good sale on it for like 30 bucks. I just had to pick it up because I knew I was going to need it for this anyway. So I'm going to need it for other things like I'm tired of, you know, putting lug nuts on. But this thing here, it goes up to 250 pounds of 250 foot-pounds of torque, which is kind of nice. And it can run off an 8-gallon compressor, which we're going to do something about this compressor business. I'm about ready to upgrade because 8 gallons is not hacking the program on my other tools. And when the time comes, I'll explain to you, you know, all my tools are rated. See, this is rated at 3.3 pounds at 90 psi, which is great. The problem is the tank is so small that it just doesn't, you have to wait and wait and wait. You turn the disc cutter around 3 times and it's out of air. So I need something bigger, and we will get something bigger. Anyway, I guess since I'm going to have to go downtown and buy a socket, I guess maybe at the end of this video I better do a budget update. Spent quite a bit of money. I think we had something like $1,100 left on the budget, on the original $2,500. The last time we did it. And I bought quite a few things, so we're probably maxed out or pretty close to it by now. One other thing, a couple of videos ago I told you that it takes 220 foot-pounds maximum to tighten that nut up on there. That's not true. It's 180 to 220. The 220 is the maximum, not the minimum. So 180 to 220, which is why I needed an impact wrench that would handle up to 250 foot-pounds of torque. Well, here we go. Finally, we're putting the old cover on top of the filler tube. And I'm having to drill new holes. They just didn't line up. There's just no way this thing probably came from a 64 T-Bird. There's no way it was going to line up here, and I tried, but it's just not going to work. So I'm only going to hold it on with 3 screws. One there, one there, and one there. There's where the holes are in the cover, and those are the only ones I'm going to use. Incidentally, those holes are 3/16 in diameter on the cover, and I'm drilling with 5/32, which is a couple of sizes smaller than the 3/16. And I'm using these little sheet metal screws, these little self-tappers, or I think that's what they're called. Anyway, I got some short ones and I got some long ones, because I wasn't sure which ones I wanted to use. Where's the long ones here? I had some long, yeah, I got some really short ones right here. I got some really short ones and some fairly good sized ones. So I didn't want to, take a chance. I didn't know if I was going to put one up there. I didn't want to take a chance of punching down into the gas tank. Forget that crap. Okay, one more screw and we're done. Now I'm not going to try to, paint these things black with the heads of the screws black with a little paintbrush, or tape everything off and give it a spray. Forget all that crap. We got us some clear here. Just going to go ahead and shoot it with the clear. And that's all it takes. Good to go. Well, the axle housing is now positioned in place. All I have to do is take the U-bolts and put these bottom, bracket in. Now, the interesting thing about this bracket is, now when you put your U-bolts in, when you're all done, you want to have equal lengths as much as possible sticking out below the bottom of each of the each of the nuts. You don't want to have like a really short one here and then a really long one over here. Try to even them as you go around. I'll show you that later. But this plate on this Ford now, on this Thunderbird, this plate, when you're all done tightening this thing up, the bottom of this plate, the bottom lip of this plate, is supposed to be against the top lip of that one. Let me get this out of the way so I'll show you what I'm talking about. This top lip all the way down, edge, all the way down on both sides, on both of these sides, has to be up against the lip all the way down on this item. So it's kind of you got to kind of play with it back and forth. In other words, you don't want any spaces between the two. They got to be right together. Alright, the first thing we're going to do is put our little rubber pad on, just like we did on top. It's kind of a tighter fit on the bottom. May take, oh, she went on. Okay, she's on. She's tighter fit. It'll draw up. Then we take our little bracket. Boy, this baby was really rusty. Look how pitted that thing was. Man, oh man, I'm glad I got all the rust off of that. And then that hole again, one more time, that hole, this rubber round thing here goes in that hole. So let me get it up, and then I'll take one of the U-bolts and run it down from the top all the way down through to where it comes out one of the this set of holes on one side or the other, depending on which side is facing the U-bolt. In order to squeeze the upper and lower clamp together with those pads between them, I mean, they were just so far apart that the U-bolts wouldn't even go down through. And so I had to squeeze it together to get I had to use a big old C-clamp. I just put it top and bottom and just kept twisting it from the top. I didn't have a whole lot of room in the bottom because I have the jacks in the way. I was also jacking it up with both of our jacks, and to get it to where I could get the nut on the threads. And I now have the nuts on all the threads, as you can see. I'll be taking it down. Now, one thing you have to do is you have to make sure that those U-bolts are straight up and down, not cockeyed this way or cockeyed that way. So that's what I'm doing right now. This one here looks a little bit out toward the here, so what I'm going to do is just kind of tap it in a little bit. I'll keep working with it, but both of them, as you can see, this one over here looks to be tilted this way, but of course some of that might have to do with the way the jack has the axle housing jacked up. So we'll see. I'll get them snugged up pretty good, then I'll lower everything down, straighten it out, and finish torquing them. Alright, they look pretty straight right now. Now remember, we have to have this top bracket and the bottom bracket have to be completely closed. They have to be touching. Now how do I know that? Now it has to touch on both sides. Now how do I know that? Well, because it says so in the shop manual. Well, our axle housing is finally in. I'm going to tell you that was not an easy task. Man, oh man, oh man. Trying to, you know, get those things together, squeeze together, top and bottom to where actually it's the center part of the two plates that need to touch. The ends will never do it. They're kind of tapered out. And so you'll see a little space right there. That you'll have that on both ends. It's in the middle is where they have to touch. So anyway, I'll probably have to re-torque them down and retighten them down later on. Right now my poor old arms about had it. So let's see what we can do in the next segment. The original plan for this video was to go ahead and finish this vid up by taking apart the differential, you know, getting the yoke off and the pinion nut, stuff like that. But I don't know what happened to our 13 days of warm weather. While the wife and I were in Walmart this morning, the temperature dropped 20 degrees. It is freezing out here. So we're not going to be doing that. I'm going to find a place that's warm and spend my day there. The rest of the day anyway. We're supposed to have 3 days now all of a sudden of ice cold weather, and then it warms back up into the 50s. I don't know, 13 days turned out to be about 8, I guess, 7 or 8 of warm weather. But I guess I shouldn't be looking a gift horse in the mouth, you know, but I still got a lot done. However, we are still going to, there's going to be more to this video, so just hang in there a little while longer. I want to go in, I want to sit in front of the computer, I want to tell you a few things about differentials and what we're going to be doing with this, and then beginning in the next video, that's what we're going to do. So I'll pick you up when I get in front of the computer. This is a video on YouTube. It's titled, you know, tightening a pinion nut, which is exactly what we're going to be doing. Compressing a crush sleeve, and we'll show you what that is, and setting the bearing preload. All this is saying is that when we put that nut on the end of that shaft, we're going to be squeezing those bearings together. There's a set of bearings in the front, set of bearings in the rear, with the shaft between them. We're going to be squeezing them, but you don't want to over squeeze them too tightly because they'll burn up, and you don't want them to be too loose because they'll flop around and destroy each other. It would be just like there's no oil in your rear end if it's too loose. So what they do is they put a crush sleeve between the two. It's a collapsible sleeve. They call it a crush sleeve, or sometimes it's called a compression sleeve. And what happens is that the sleeve has a ridge around the center that enables it to, as you tighten the nut down, it enables the bearings to be compressed in very slowly, very easily, and it keeps pressure on both sides as it goes down. That way you don't over tighten it too quickly, okay? And I'm going to show you what that is. This is a great video. It's by Accu Auto Parts, I guess it is. They call it, I'm not sure how it's said. I give credit here now. It's ACCU Auto Parts. And I want you to see it. Let me open it up here, and I'll stop it from point to point and show you what I'm talking about. If I can find my cursor. Okay, here goes. It's really a great video. It's quick, and it shows you. Okay, this is the shaft. This is your pinion gear. This is the shaft. And this is, you know, where the spline is, just like on our differential. And here's where the nut goes on. That's, if I were to take that thing out of our differential that we have out there for the T-Bird, this is what we would have if we stripped everything off of it. This is what we would have. Now the first thing that goes on is a spacer, and then a bearing, and then a bearing race. Now notice that the bearings, this bearing's facing toward the spline area. Now comes the crush sleeve I was telling you about. Let me get a pen here to point with. We got one. Now this crush sleeve has that ridge down the center. It has that ridge down the center, and that's the weak point. Now this is a very long crush sleeve. Most of them aren't that long. It'll be about, you know, maybe from this point here out to here, about the same distance on each side. But as you put the nut on and it forces the yoke against the bearing that'll go on next, it'll force this thing that way, and this end here will press against the back of this bearing race, and this thing will actually crush. It'll actually come together.
It's a weak point. You see the next item. There it is. Okay, here comes the second bearing race and the bearing, and then comes the plate, and then the nut goes on. Okay, now as you tighten it down, keep your eye on that crush sleeve right there. It's kind of hard to see, kind of hard to notice, but as the nut goes down, it will cause this thing to collapse in. They'll change color to show you that it's under force. See how the nut's going down? See how it's beginning to collapse? And it's actually, like I said, it's just putting pressure this way and putting pressure this way. Now, if you wind up over tightening this nut and over collapse the crush sleeve, you can't uncollapse it. You understand what I'm saying? And there's a certain amount of pressure, and we'll show you how that's done in the next video. But you can't, like, oh, I went too far, because the setting on this when I check it out is too tight. I got it too tight. Well, too bad. You got to remove the nut, put a brand new sleeve in, start over. Now keep your eye on it. See, this goes down even further on the thread. There we go. Now, if all is good, see it slowly torquing down, slowly. You're supposed to be having a wrench on it. And then that's it. That's how that baby works. Now let's go to the next video. Now here's another good video that was put out by YouTube handle Alley Cat Customs. And he did a really excellent job here. And what he has, let me make this thing bigger. What he has here again is the pinion shaft and gear out of the differential. This is your gear part right here in his hand, and this is your bearing, and then there's your crush sleeve right there. It's not as wide, as the other one was. This is equal distance on each side. Then of course your other bearing and your spline, and this is where your nut goes on. And he talks about what this video is about is eliminating the crush sleeve, which he considers to be old-fashioned, and replacing it with solid spacers. Now, I wasn't sure whether or not he knew that he came on like solid spacers was something new, but it's really not. It goes way back. In the beginning, that's what they had, was solid spacers. They didn't have crush sleeve. So now they're kind of drifting back the other way. And what it is you put a solid spacer in there. You pull off the crush sleeve, put a solid spacer in there, and if it's not wide enough, then you add very thin ones. They're mic'd out and labeled as to the thickness, and you put one on top of another until you get your required torque. And on your nut that I said I would cover in the next video, we'll show you that. Now here he's showing the new replacement solid sleeve, and he'll show you the very thin spacers that go on top of it that enable you to get the width that you need in order to do your torquing on the end of the shaft. So that's what solid spacers look like, and they go to in the exact same place as the crush sleeve. But the good thing about this is, I told you earlier that if you over collapse the crush sleeve, you can't uncollapse it. It doesn't apply here. If you're not getting the required compression you need and the required torque amount, then you can go ahead and take the nut off and just add another one or take one off. It doesn't affect them any. Whereas with the crush sleeve, it screws it all up. Once the crush sleeve screwed up, that's it. It's over. So that's what we're going to be doing next time. Hopefully, we're not going to be using solid spacers. I think it's already got solid spacers in it, and we're just going to go ahead and use the same ones. If not, then we're going to have to go to crush sleeve, and we'll work on that as we get to it. But I wanted you to see what we're going to be doing next time with the differential. Okay, one more thing. Let's do a budget update.
Until next time, this is John.